where we showcase amazing Australian women speakers. So you get to see the huge amount of talent available. And so we can shift the stats from 30% women speakers at events to 50%. Joining me today is the wonderful Bronwen Sciortino, and I can assure you all that I have made sure that I have pronounced Bronwen's surname correctly. So joining me today is Bronwen, chatting about what she does. And Bronwen is known affectionately as the simplicity expert. As an international author and simplicity expert, Bronwen spends every day creating tools and resources that help people learn how to easily reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, and create simple steps that enable them to live a more conscious, connected, and mindful life. Welcome to the show, Bronwen. It's a delight to have you.
Morning, Rachel. I'm just so pleased to be here and I can't wait to see where our conversation takes us.
Oh, me too. Me too. Well, let's start with how you are today.
Great. I feel like I'm in the darkness because we've got big storms here in Western Australia, and it doesn't seem to matter what I do with the light. It seems that I'm in the dark today. So,
Oh no.
but otherwise, yeah, feeling great. Life's amazing, and loving being able to take my message to the world and help people see things differently.
Yes. Speaking of simplicity, you're the simplicity expert, and what does that actually mean?
Great question. I actually get asked this a lot because people have this sort of mindset that simplicity means that you have to be a minimalist, or you have to, do fewer things, or be involved in fewer things, or miss out on things in life. And actually, simplicity is really just about working out where you're at, where you want to go, and then finding the simplest steps to get yourself there. So as humans, we have this amazing ability to overcomplicate things. If there's a way for us to make things complex, we will find it. And actually, the easiest and most graceful pathway through life is to make things as simple as possible for ourselves.
Yes, I think making anything simple is a really hard task to break it down and to narrow down what we actually need. Because as soon as you said, what we do is we ask people to think about what they want, what they need, to isolate those goals and identify what we need, and also to come up with simple steps to get there. My brain immediately went to, I get so distracted. Is that like a really common thing?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the way that we live life now, we are connected 24/7. There is no respite from any part of our life at any point during the day. We have this wonderful thing called a smartphone that's in our pockets and our hands constantly, and it's pinging at us, and there's people from friends, family, work constantly, invading our life. But also it means that we have more information at our fingertips, and we're constantly, you see something that comes up and you go, oh, I'll go and Google that, or, and then you end up down a rabbit hole exploring things and trying to find out things. So there is so much more that's happening in life. It happens at a much faster pace, and we live our lives overstimulated and overwhelmed because of everything that's going on around us. But also, if you overlay on top of that, since we've had the social media platforms, we have this drive that has just come out in us that wants us to prove constantly that we are successful. And that means that we're having to overload our schedules so that we've got more things that we're doing, so that we've got more things that we're sharing that shows how successful we are. So it's not at all unusual to feel like, there's just so much going on. I don't know how to deal with this, and I can't keep up. But the reality is that when you actually pair that back to the things that really mean something to you, the things that are important to you, you can start to really direct your life in the ways that will fuel you instead of constantly draining from your energy tank.
Yes, to be able to isolate your path in amongst all of that would just be gold. And I can imagine that you don't come across people very often who have it down pat.
Look, I think most people don't have it down pat because they've been taught to live differently. So we've been taught, like you just stepped straight into what everyone believes is that simplifying things is hard. And it's actually not. It's actually really easy when you know how.
Yeah.
So I like to use the power of questions to actually cut the auto response, because we're so busy that we just respond without thinking about things to get through the day. And when you cut the auto response and really make your answers to the questions that you're being asked consciously connected to you, then you can start to actually make the decisions that are yours. A lot of our life is being directed by other people. So they tell us what's wrong with us, and then, by the way, here's the thing that will fix us. Most are really unique individuals, and so we need and deserve a unique solution. So when we actually start to look at the world from that viewpoint and from that perspective, it makes it so much easier for us to calm the farm, really, start to look at the things that are right for us and create our steps forwards.
Wow. The messages that we get from outside are just, if we're onto it, we're in a better position to combat it, aren't we? But
Yes.
I'm actually really curious to know how you actually came into doing this for a living. Is there a story behind how you arrived at helping people?
Yeah, so I spent almost 2 decades in the corporate world, and this is not about corporate bashing. I'm not against the corporate world, but my story is more about who you become within the machinations, if you like, of the corporate world. And again, it's that who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to have studied, where you're supposed to live, the car you're supposed to drive, the clothes you're supposed to wear, all of that sort of stuff drives you in a particular direction. And I spent nearly 2 decades doing that. And I spent every day looking after everybody else, making sure everybody else was okay, sorting everybody else's dramas and life and all of that sort of stuff. And I pushed myself so hard and for so long that I broke, and I broke spectacularly. So I went from being an award-winning executive to on the floor, unable to cope in life in less than 60 seconds. And that pivotal point just changed my life, changed the way that I look at the world, the way that I look at myself, what I'm prepared to accept in my life. But it also taught me that we don't have to do all of those things and push ourselves to breaking point to be able to make simple and easy and practical changes in our life. The biggest realization for me is that we fear change more than we fear death. And it's not until we have that near-death experience or that really traumatic, tumultuous experience in life that we realize that change is actually not that scary.
Yes. It must be such a journey coming out of that, and the things that you have learned along the way. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. There's a whole process to that, isn't there?
There is, yeah. So it took me 2 years of, really deep, overwhelming, invasive, intensive, what they call the work, to really piece myself back together again. And I literally shattered into a million pieces and had to pick each one up and say, okay, well, what is this? Do I need this? Is this working for me? And then progressively put myself back together. And what you see today is what I like to call Bronwen 2.0. And also I think the biggest realization through that process is that so many of us stop ourselves from making change because we believe that we have to throw everything out and start from scratch. And what I learned when I was putting Bronwen 2.0 together is that, probably 70% of what I was doing before and who I was is still valid and valuable and works for me.
Yeah.
Another 15% was in that category but needed a few little tweaks. And then there was maybe 15% that I said, actually, this isn't working for me. It's not who I am. It's causing me serious issues. Time for it to go.
Yeah.
And I think when you start with one little thing.
Mm.
It's so much easier. Whereas, when you leave it till that traumatic event, you're forced to look at everything at once. It is so much harder and so much more overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so, part of what I did as I was coming through recovery was I wrote my first book, because I recognized as part of the process that I was terrified of writing anything personal down.
Yes.
So, and I was terrified because somebody might be able to use that as evidence against me that I wasn't perfect. Talk about complexity.
Yeah.
I had this little cycle for myself where I could never ever write anything personal down. And so, as part of my homework, it was journaling. Start to journal. Start to really get over this fear. And it took me 3 weeks to write one word on a page, and that's how scared of it I was.
Wow.
But out of that process came my first book.
Yeah.
That book is Keep It Super Simple, and that's all about helping people to. It was part of my recovery, yes, but it also helps people to really understand how they've got themselves into situations, work out what's going on for them, and then create their own solutions on the other side of that.
Yeah. Wow. It is such a hot pot when you have to go through something so intense. And I'm guessing that what the service that you provide is designed to help people before they get to that point, because you've been there, you know how scary it is. So who are the kinds of people that you typically help? Who tends to seek you out?
I think there's not really anyone on the planet, any industry, in any job, any gender, who isn't stressed, and who doesn't actually need to know that it's okay and you can take simple steps to move your life in a different way.
Yeah.
So technically, my market is everyone. Um, I love working with women because what I've found with women is that they're so much more receptive, and this is a generality, but they're so much more receptive to finding that different perspective, finding the different way, finding the efficiency in the movement and moving forward. And also, I think because women juggle so much, finding a way to juggle the balls in a different way, is something that everybody's always looking for. But ultimately, I think the people that I really want to work with are the ones who are open to doing things differently, and they're open to having that different perspective and seeing things in a different way.
Yes, and those percentages you were talking about earlier, about how much of the old me do I bring along with me? Because we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can take what's working for us, but we can also redefine that and mold that into something else. And that would be different for everyone.
The bio-individuality piece is key. For too long we've had too many generic solutions thrown at us, and then we feel like we fail because they don't work for us. But they were never going to work for us because they're not built for us. And I often get asked, well, what do you do? Like, I want to be able to do what you do. And it's like, well, I've purpose built my day, how I do things, the things that I do for me and for what I need, with the flexibility in there for what's going on for me at the moment. So it's highly unlikely it's going to work for you, but there might be bits of it that you go, wow, I'd like to try that. And I think that's the key, is the try bit. Play with it. Life is supposed to be fun, and we spend so much of it miserable, right? Because we're exhausted and we're stressed and overwhelmed and overloaded. And it's about, what do we need in our life so that it's fun again? And how do you give that to yourself?
Yes, because we all hear about you've got to make time for personal care and, switch off, put your feet up, but we don't give ourselves the full permission to do that. And I like how you say that, that we can have something that is purpose-built for our day. And the purpose build, I think, reminds us that there's no room for failure, isn't there? Because, as you say, the generic solutions aren't designed for all of us. It might work for someone else in some way, but when it comes down to it, we all need our own program or our purpose-built day. I love how you say that. Absolutely love that. So how did you get your message out to people? Because here you are, you've had this horrible experience, but bittersweet because you went through such a change and you emerged, struggled out of that cocoon, not an easy task, and you burst onto the world and you went, okay, so I feel a different direction here. Can you tell us about that process and how you brought your message and your eventual product to the rest of us?
Well, I like to say that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. When my book went out into the world, I suddenly had people contacting me and saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing! It's like you wrote this for me. How else can I work with you?"
Oh, wow.
And suddenly people were saying, "Can you do a keynote? Can you facilitate a workshop? Can you talk to our leaders? Can you work one-on-one in exec coaching? Can you?" And I was only halfway through my recovery. And so I had, suddenly people from all over the world like sending me these messages, and I was like, how am I going to deal with this? I'm still broken. So it was a really amazing impetus for me to actually build the structure for myself.
Yeah.
In simplifying what I do, but also in creating that non-negotiable self-care.
Yeah.
And I know that self-care has been taken over by this, multi-billion-dollar industry, and everybody thinks that it's go to a retreat for a week and sit on a banana lounge and have massages, and it's expensive in time. It's expensive in time and money, and all of those sorts of things. But self-care is actually the ability to maintain yourself.
Yeah.
In every situation. And what I realized was I had been completely missing in my focus and my attention. That had gone to everybody else. And I was constantly giving from an empty fuel tank. And I got to the point where there was nothing left for me to give, but I found a way to give more. And ultimately, that's what broke me. Yeah. So I realized that for me to be able to do this work, especially still being broken, especially, still not fully recovered, I needed to create the platform where the non-negotiable in my life was my stuff, the stuff that I needed for me to be okay.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did, and I still do it today. And if I get to points in my life where I just go, this is not fun anymore, then I rejig and I recut and I reprogram my day. That purpose build, and I just go, okay, what I had in place before is not working for me anymore. What do I need now? So it's that flexibility to move with what's happening in your life. And it doesn't have to be big things. It could be, that you use essential oils and you have that going in a diffuser next to you. It could be that you do stretches and, a number of times during the day. And I'm really lucky because I've got two mini house panthers. So I've got two black cats, and they get really demanding in my life, and they force me off the computer onto the floor to play with them. So I have breaks during the day because they want to play. And it's quite because then I'm playing and it's fun, and I'm away from the computer and my body's in a different position and I'm moving. So that is like a 5-minute thing, but it helps me. Yeah. It could be, that I have a cup of herbal tea. There's so many little things that you can do. Deep breathing, 5 or 6 really deep breaths can trigger your system back into the parasympathetic nervous system. Cut stress immediately. Little things make such a difference, but it's just being really conscious of what you need. Yes,
and we tend to think, we try and think bigger and something that's going to make a huge impact, and that in itself I see as an obstacle. And speaking of which, hello.
That's Mason. Yep.
So I'll get distracted by a cat any day. Hey, kitty. We can often be overwhelmed by trying to find that big release, and just in that sense, it poses an obstacle. So that's enough to put us off. And so we don't tend to find those little things in every day. And I love that reminder because, I myself sat and just closed my eyes for 10 minutes yesterday and did some breathing. And the difference was enormous, absolutely enormous. But I also like how you say that it's non-negotiable. You have to find what is non-negotiable in each day. Would you say that that's a really good starting point for people to?
Yeah, I would, but I would put a caveat on that. It's the non-negotiable for you.
Yeah.
So, because otherwise everybody else's stuff becomes the non-negotiable and your stuff becomes the I'll do that later.
Yeah.
And later is a lie. Later never ever comes.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen, right? Which means the stuff for you never happens.
Yeah.
So the non-negotiable is your stuff. It's the things that you need for you. And you find the time in the day that's best for you. And if for some reason you have to move that, it goes to a different place in the same day.
Yeah.
So it's non-negotiable. It happens in the day for you, and you choose whether you do the same thing every day or maybe you do different things on different days, but it's non-negotiable. And put it in your diary. Like so many people say to me, particularly women, oh, but I have to put things over that because otherwise people will think that I'm not doing the right thing by them. It's like nobody can see your diary. Nobody knows what's in your diary. It's enough for you to say, I'm not available until, X date, X time, whatever. And people just go, oh, okay, no problems. And they'll fit in around that.
Yes.
So it's that change in perspective, the change in mindset. Until you make your stuff non-negotiable, your self-care won't be where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So how long have you been doing this now for, Bronwen?
Yeah, so my first book was released in May 2015, so coming up to 10 years. And in that time, I've done all sorts of different things and found myself in all sorts of amazing situations working with different people in different ways. And I love it. I've got a bit of an eclectic soul, so I love that there's a bit of variety and all that sort of stuff. And I just tend to go where I feel I'm needed. So if people come and say, can you do this for us? It's like, okay, well, am I really needed there? Does that align with who I am? Does it align with my values? They're my first questions. And if the answer to that is yes, it's like, okay, can I fit this into my diary without impacting my health and well-being? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do this.
Yep. Yes, because there are so many experiences that you would have had with many different people, and having worked with all different kinds of people, I presume you work with individuals, with groups, with a whole auditorium of people. You've been on different kinds of stages, shall we say, and you've met so many different kinds of people. And as a teacher, I'm a teacher. I love meeting different people, so I do relate to that eclectic soul that you describe. I love finding the curious things about people and what makes them tick. And people are different. So we all have our own way of understanding something and defining something. So it must be so interesting seeing people go through this journey of finding that simple way of living or simpler way of living, defining their own steps, but really owning it to the point where it's very bespoke and it's very meaningful to them. And
there's nothing that touches my heart more than watching the light come on in someone's eyes. That they see things differently.
Yes, and it makes what you do very satisfying.
Yes.
Definitely. So are there a couple of standout experiences, perhaps when you have been speaking somewhere or a client where, you just remember them for a particular reason?
Probably the standout speaking experience for me was being on a stage or on the stage in Los Angeles, where the band Kiss usually rehearse.
Oh, wow.
With Ariana Grande in the stage next door.
Okay.
And I was live streamed to 1 million people around the world at the same time. So that was pretty cool. That was very cool.
Oh, wow.
That felt like a bit of a celebrity moment.
Oh, that is fabulous. Congratulations.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And I think for me, the standout moments with clients or working in a group it really is seeing that moment when people just go, you mean I can do things differently? And then you can see the pathway in front of themselves for how they get there.
Yes.
That just is so special. And A real privilege to witness.
Oh yeah, yes, because ultimately it's their journey, and
Yeah.
in terms of what we do, we're there to help and guide and whatever. But it's up to that person to own it and to do something with it. But I totally agree that when the light comes on, when you see people get it, and you're like, this is why I'm here. This is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
But I want to also come back to your experience being on that stage where you were being broadcast to millions of people around the world. What went through my mind was, geez, were you nervous? And I'm sure that there's a bunch of other people watching right now thinking the same thing. How did you navigate the nerves and did it just feel like a normal gig for you, or was it something that you were just like really mindful of and you had to really get yourself through it? What happened there for you, and perhaps what's some advice that you could share?
I think for me the build up was the worst. So like
Yeah.
it was like walking through mud in gumboots trying to get there, because you get into your head and it's like, oh geez, this is a lot of people. How am I going to share a message that's going to be meaningful to everyone? You sort of have those conversations. But one of the things I did as part of my recovery was I really tuned in to what I was saying to myself, and I catch it really quickly, and so I could you really turn that on its head and say, well, what if I do this? And actually, I'm really confident in myself, in my ability to deliver in the moment, and all of those sorts of things. So I actually love nothing better than a live. I understand why people find it so fearful and overwhelming. But for me, because I trust in that voice that comes to me and says, this is the message you need to share right now, I love Alive because I love seeing where it goes. I love the tangents. I love, and so for me, it was really get the lead up to it was the hardest, but getting on the stage, I just felt like I was home. It felt like I was where I was supposed to be in the moment. It felt like I was sharing what I needed to in the moment. It was fun. Like I really liked it. And afterwards, you sort of, because there was people in the audience in front of us as well, in the stage, but there was also this live stream aspect. So it was like being in two worlds at the same time as well, I felt like that was really cool as well.
What a blast. What an absolute blast. That would have been amazing. And it sounds like you had really learned how to own your space, and you just took that permission by the horns and said, you know what, I'm meant to be here. So that's dealt with. I'm not going to stand here and wonder and question myself. I'm not going to let that voice in. It was something that you confidently stood in place for and didn't allow anything to knock you over. And it has to be very deliberate, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think because I'd done that assessment to start with, is this aligned with who I am? Is this the right place for my message? Is this okay for my health and wellness? Because I'd done that assessment already, I knew that those boxes were ticked. So I knew that it was going to fill me rather than take for me. And so that made it easy to know to say yes to doing it as well. And yes, it's the biggest thing that I've done. And that's okay. There's always going to be something that's bigger, and that's okay. It's about saying yes and backing yourself in the moment.
Yes, and having all that preparation leading up to that in terms of these are my values, these are the boxes that it's ticking. You don't have to go in blindly. You can absolutely prepare yourself. So, it has been an absolute delight chatting with you, Bronwen. How can people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you to ask you to speak or to do some training? What's the best way people can get in touch?
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Australian Women's Speakers group, so you can find my profile through that website. You can also find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under Bronwen Sciortino author.
Wonderful. And if you're all wondering how Bronwen's name is spelt, Bronwen, you can see it on the screen there, and her surname, Sciortino. Just rewind and listen to that again if you need to. Bronwen, is there maybe a tip or two that you would like to leave with our audience before we finish up today?
Yeah, I think two things. The first is there's never been a more important time to look after your health and well-being. We're seeing some extraordinary strides made, research being conducted, and technology is coming out in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
But we've also never been sicker as humanity.
Yeah.
So there's a mismatch. There's something not working there. So now there's never been more important than now to do that. And there is no, now is the only powerful moment that you've got. So, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
Now is the only time that you've really got power. So now's the time to do something. And the second tip is that bio-individuality, the importance of purposely building for yourself.
Yeah.
Generic solutions aren't going to work for you. That's almost guaranteed. So it's time to actually do what you need to do for you and do it in the simplest way possible.
Yeah. Incredibly wise. Spoken from a woman who has been through life, been through all sorts of stuff and risen above. And I am sure that there is just so much that we have all gained just from listening to you talk about your journey, your experiences, and your advice and wisdom. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing that with us.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I've loved where our conversation has gone, and I can't wait to see what happens and the steps that people take off the back of this.
Oh, yeah, me too. Me too. Well, I hope you have all enjoyed this interview. I know I have certainly enjoyed myself. The show goes live every Thursday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and will be uploaded straight to LinkedIn and Facebook. If you need a speaker, then please go to womenspeakers.com.au and you don't have to pay a commission. You can contact your preferred speaker directly and you can search by topic and location. You are also welcome to post a request into our Facebook and LinkedIn groups called Australian Women Speakers. If you are a speaker or want to be, sign up to our directory and get found. My name is Rachel Pietsch. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.